Well, I don't think Rishi will want this slipping out. Oh, sorry, Rishi. Let's begin. Now, of course, ever since Rishi entered Downing Street, the polls have taken a plummet ever since, haven't they? Purely because, in my opinion, he wasn't actually voted in by anyone at all, was he? He was just kind of given a place by a backing of a few hundred MPs instead of the membership and the public as well. But now, of course, it's around about the time for him to face the public. He's probably pooing his pants because he knows, doesn't he, that he'll more than likely get kicked out of 10 Downing Street, which, let's face it, he surely doesn't want to happen, does he? So what's he going to do? Well, apparently they've come up with a plan, which actually would be quite embarrassing for Rishi. And we've heard in the past, haven't we, that Rishi's going to go crawling back to Boris and say, I'm sorry, Boris, can you please come and save me? Which, let's face it, would be really embarrassing, especially as quite a lot of people, including me, see Rishi as the person who basically was responsible for overthrowing Boris, wasn't he? Well, in my opinion anyway. So what's going to happen then? Well, this article says, inside the secret plot to bring Boris Johnson back to the Tories that don't have a hope in hell, which, let's face it, has got a bit of a problem at the moment because Boris isn't actually an MP altogether, is he? He left, didn't he, before the quite biased, in my opinion, Privileges Committee, or Kangaroo Court as they're otherwise known, would have dished out quite a sizable suspension from Parliament, which obviously probably would have meant he'd have left anyway. More than likely, I'm guessing, even if he did win his old job back as the Prime Minister after Liz Truss instead of Rishi. But the article says that the alleged plan could involve Mr Johnson taking the place of a current Tory candidate in an area likely to vote Conservative this year. And it comes after, I always say right-wing, don't they, but right-wing Reform UK, or centre-right-wing as they more than likely are, led by Richard Tice, is surging in the polls. And there's no surprise in it because the Conservatives aren't really exactly that conservative at the moment, are they? They're more kind of like a light pink Labour Party, in my opinion. And that's after, of course, even when Jeremy Hunt could have actually upped the tax allowance, but instead, of course, he decided to cut 2p off national insurance, which unfortunately won't benefit everyone, will it? It does say that the Tories, of course, lag behind Labour in the polls, and concerns of a wipeout at the next general election loom. There are rumours that Mr Johnson, of course Boris, may be enticed back into the political fold. And according to reports, the constituency of Henley and Thame could be a possibility. Mr Johnson served as an MP for Henley back in 2001 and 2008 before he became the Mayor of London. And whilst the constituency's current MP, John Howell, recently announced that he was stepping down, the candidate that is set to take his place and run for victory, as it says, in Henley and Thame is Caroline Newton. And Miss Newton previously served as an Assistant Director of Greater London Authority when Mr Johnson was Mayor, so it does make me wonder if we might see one or two backdoor deals taking place and suddenly see her decide to ease out of the running, shall we say, before Boris comes in and then, of course, would more than likely take her place. I personally think that Boris might actually be tempted to do this, not because, of course, it helped Rishi out, but because, like a lot of people, including me, he doesn't actually want to see Keir Starmer in 10 Downing Street. Although, personally, that would also open the opportunity up to Boris if the Conservatives still lost, and then Boris could then put himself forward in the next leadership contest in which he'd hopefully win back his old job as Prime Minister. And this time, of course, without all that Partygate crap, and hopefully, he might actually have a decent charge in getting his policies through without everyone trying to go against him and other stuff getting in the way, because he's been quite vocal, hasn't he, against the Windsor Framework. So hopefully if he came in, he'd quash that, thereby cutting away the shackles of the EU, which Rishi sought to impose upon us, in my opinion, by putting this whole Windsor Framework in place. Because let's face it, they're more than likely to kick up quite a fuss, wouldn't they? Because they are part of the UK after all. But Mr Johnson's mooted returns, it says, comes after the Tories fall behind Labour in the polls, and current Prime Minister, who knows how long for, continues to see a rebellion as more and more serving MPs say they won't run at the next election. The most recent one, from what I've heard, is Theresa May. Although, let's face it, that isn't exactly going to be too much of a loss, is it? Bye-bye, Maybot. One backbencher said, there are many in the party who don't think we can have a hope in hell of winning unless Boris comes back. I personally agree with that. I know a lot of people didn't like Boris as Prime Minister. I personally didn't think he'd done too bad of a job, especially as he did have a lot of things in the way, like COVID, Partygate, and the whole war that's going on at the moment. But Conservative MP Paul Bristow added, it seems the Prime Minister also thinks that we should bring back Boris. He is a great campaigner and a galvanising figure for Conservatives. He obviously has a role to play. And asked if he would welcome Mr Johnson back into the party, Mr Sunak said, I am proud of the work we did together, and we worked well together for a long time. However, Mr Sunak also caveated, saying, in the end, there are well-documented differences. Well, yeah, I'm not surprised, Rishi, because you did put something in Boris's back, shall we say, eh? Well, in my opinion, anyway. But that's not it, because pollsters have warned that Tory support in rural areas is collapsing after the budget disappointed, and MPs in these constituencies and their constituents may abandon the Conservatives and vote for alternative parties instead. I myself can't foresee me voting Conservatives while Rishi is in charge because of what he actually did to Boris. And I'm sorry, Rishi, but I can't vote for backstabbers, and that is what I see you as, unfortunately. And I'm sure quite a lot of other people would agree with that. So I myself will be voting reform, unless, of course, the Conservatives kick out Rishi before then and turn the whole party around back to the Conservative Party it should actually been in the first place. Although let's face it, the chances of that happening are probably about the same as me going on a lunch date with Amanda Holden. But I'd love to be proved wrong, Amanda, eh?